is the last remaining structure directly connected to Castleberry's founder, Hibbert Castleberry. Built in 1952, the six-bedroom Southern Revival style residence served as Castleberry's home until its passing in 1969. Now owned by the city, the estate's future is uncertain. Raising maintenance costs and a lack of consensus among city leaders have put the property at risk. The nominator was seeking inclusion on the 11 to Save list to inspire public engagement and advocacy with the goal of eliminating the threat of losing this historically significant site. Here's some examples of schools that have been on the 11 to Save list. There's the Rollins College in Orange County, Plant City High School in Hillsborough County, and Lake Hall School in Leon County. The Lake Hall School is a small wood frame building erected in 1870 by once enslaved tenant farmers who acquired portions of the old Hall plantation from former planter, Mariano Poppy after the Civil War. Schooling time was tied to the growing seasons and largely dependent on whether a family needed or could spare child labor in the farm or field. Purchased by Leon County Schools in 1919, the one room with several benches on each side, a stand up stage, and heated by a wood stove eventually closed in the 1950s. Threatened by encroaching development, descendants of the Lake Hall community desired to restore and open the schoolhouse to the public as a historical exhibit. Recently, the Leon County Board of Commissioners voted to support these preservation efforts by acquiring the property. The nominator wished to continue to raise awareness to restoration efforts underway to preserve this important part of the Lake Hall community. So here are some examples of churches that made the 11 to Save list. Mount Olive AME Church of Jacksonville in Duval County, Black Bottom House of Prayer in Orange County, and the Manatee Village Church in Manatee County. uh, Manatee Village Church. Construction of this church began in 1887, but was halted when a yellow fever epidemic claimed the lives of the pastor and many members of the congregation. Despite this tragedy, the resilient community resumed work, and 2 years later, the church opened as the first Christian congregation south of Tampa on the Florida mainland. In 1975, the Manatee United Methodist Church donated the building, and it was relocated to its current site as part of the U.S. Bicentennial Preservation Project. This effort marked the founding of Manatee Village Historical Park. Still a consecrated house of worship, the church continues to host baptisms, weddings, and memorial services, remaining a meaningful part of the community's major life events. Beyond its spiritual role, the church is a powerful symbol of local heritage and a tool for educating future generations about the past. Today, the building is in urgent need of a new roof and structural rehabilitation. The nominator believes that inclusion on the 11 to Save list will raise much needed awareness and support efforts to secure funding for its preservation. And here's some examples of hotels that have been on this 11 to Save list. We have the Magic Beach Motel in St. Johns County, Duval Beach Resort, Miami-Dade County, Bellevue Biltmore Resort and Spa, and Pinellas County. The Magic Beach Motel was included in the 2025 11 to Save list. Built in 1951 in the streamlined modern style, the Magic Beach Motel is located just half a block from the Atlantic Ocean on the main street of the Volano Beach Town Center. Originally known as Blue Ocean, the motel has long served as a visual landmark in early Volano Beach. Over the years, it has appeared in various television shows, including the 1990s series Safe Harbor, starring Gregory Harrison and Rue McClanahan. The Magic Beach Motel is a rare and iconic example of Florida's mid 20th century tourism boom. Structure like this, once common across the state in the 1950s and 1960s, are rapidly disappearing due to ongoing development pressures, especially in fast growing coastal areas like Volano Beach. Today, the motel stands in a zone of intense redevelopment, placing its future in jeopardy. The nominator believes that only strong community action can prevent its loss. While there is already local interest in preserving the property, they believe that inclusion on the 11 to Save list will provide critical visibility and support, helping to educate property owners on the benefits of historic preservation and strengthening efforts to save this unique piece of Florida's architectural and cultural heritage. Here are examples of public and commercial buildings. There's a Opelika City Hall in Miami-Dade County, the federal courthouse in Broward County, and One North Orange building in Orange County. Opelika City Hall established a winter encampment at San Diego in 1910 to teach flying to naval and Army personnel. Curtis became known as the father of naval aviation. By the 1920s, he became involved in real estate development in Florida, co developing the city of Hialeah and developing the cities of Miami Springs and Opelika. Envisioning a town designed in the themes of an Arabian fantasy or Arabian Nights, Curtis hired architect Bernard M. O. Muller to design 86 buildings in a Moorish revival style. At the heart of the new community, the Opelika Administration Building was designed to serve as the headquarters for the development and sales company created by Curtis. Described as the anchor of New City and completed in 1926, it also was the flagship in the center of the town that would arrow out to other structures within its limits. It later became the Opelika City Hall and was eventually placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1982. A decade ago, the building was shuttered due to mold infestation. Since that time, a renovation project had started, but due to lack of funds, that project was put on indefinite hold. As time has gone on, the stately structure has continued to deteriorate. Here are two examples of historic cemeteries that have been on the Living to Save list. You have the Bethlehem Methodist Episcopal Cemetery in Alachua County, and the African American Cemetery statewide. Addressing the African American Cemetery statewide, the ugly history regarding the fate of many segregation era African American cemeteries was highlighted in 2019 when two forgotten cemeteries in Tampa were rediscovered. Using ground penetrating radar to discover nearly 200 graves, Tampa's Zion Cemetery was buried and forgotten under a public housing complex and warehouse prior to the Tampa Bay Times receiving a tip from a cemetery researcher. More research unveiled 5 additional erased African American cemeteries throughout the Tampa Bay area. However, for those in Florida's historic African American communities, this news was not surprising or unique. As horrible as the discovery in Tampa sounds, the examples of abandoned, disgraced, desecrated, and disturbed cemeteries can be found all over the state. For example, Mount Hernon Cemetery was developed around 1880 to serve as the final resting place for Jacksonville's rapidly growing Black community during Reconstruction. In 1941, the cemetery was deeded to the city with the requirement that the property be used either as a public cemetery or park. By 1949, it was described in local papers as being an overgrown, vacant lot with high weeds obscuring headstones. By 1969, the burial ground had been converted into a park that still retains visual reminders of it being a cemetery, including a headstone in the middle of a public street. The fate of Zion and Mount Hermon are just the tip of the iceberg. A burial ground task force mobilized by the legislature in 1998 reported that 40 to 50% of the state cemeteries were neglected or abandoned. Across the state, there could be more than 3,000 unpreserved African American cemeteries. In June, Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law Bill HB 37, intended to identify lost cemeteries by creating a task force on abandoned African American cemeteries that will create a panel of researchers to study forgotten or abandoned African American cemeteries and burial grounds across the state. Inclusion to this year's list is intended to help increase public awareness on the statewide effort to bring honor and dignity to historic sites that are long forgotten and sometimes intentionally erased from public records altogether. Here are two examples of historic districts. We have the Milton Historic District in Santa Rosa County and Lavella neighborhood in Duval County. Lavella is one of Jacksonville's oldest Gullah Geechee communities and one of Florida's first urbanized Black communities. Incorporated in 1866 and settled by former enslaved and United States colored troops soldiers, Lavella emerged as a major epicenter for the ragtime, jazz, blues, and civil rights, earning the moniker Harlem of the South. Negatively impacted by urban renewal and gentrification, vulnerable property owners are at risk of losing their properties, further endangering the community's historic sense of place. The community is now working to designate what remains as a National Register Historic District. Furthermore, the neighborhood has organized to secure equitable redevelopment opportunities and to ensure infill development is complementary and respectful of the community, its heritage, and its history. Inclusion in the 11 to Save program was intended to help these efforts by bringing more public awareness to the history of this urban neighborhood. And here are examples of two boats and a lighthouse that made the 11 to Save list. We have Noah's Ark in Putnam County, USCGC Ingham Maritime Museum in Monroe County, Sand Key Lighthouse in Pinellas County. The USCGC Ingham is one of only two preserved Treasury-class United States Coast Guard cutters. Launched on June 3rd, 1936, she was the fourth cutter named in honor of Treasury Secretary Samuel D. Ingham. Over the course of 52 years in service, the Ingham fulfilled a wide range of Coast Guard missions during both wartime and peacetime before her retirement in 1988. She earned distinguished commendations for her service in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and participated in the 1980 Mariel Boat Lift. From 1989 to 2009, the Ingham was displayed alongside the aircraft carrier Yorktown at Patriots Point in Charleston, South Carolina. Since 2009, she has served as a centerpiece of the Key West Maritime Memorial Museum. Designated a National Historic Landmark in 1992, the Ingham now faces significant preservation challenges due to ongoing exposure to the harsh saltwater marine environment. The nominator hopes that inclusion in the 2025 11 to Save list will help raise awareness and generate the increased donations and volunteer support that's needed to preserve this iconic piece of American maritime history. The 11 to Save committee considers nominations from various scopes, and before submitting, you want to make sure that the site fits at least one of the following criteria. I'm sorry. One, historical significance. Is the site historic? Resources 40 or more years old are considered historic. So both the Carver High School and the Raquel Church fulfill this criterion based on when they were built. Criteria number two is threat. Is the site threatened? And how severely is the resource endangered? This is the Jackson House in Hillsborough County. Although saved from demolition more than once, the Jackson House is in poor condition. Selection criteria three, significance to the community. Is the site important to the local community? Would they like to see it preserved? Here you can see St. Cloud Municipal Utilities Building, and the effort to save the building in Osceola County was championed by local residents who organized to save the blighted building. Criteria number four, significance to an underrepresented community. Is the site significant for an underrepresented group of Floridians? Here we have Old Mount Carmel Baptist Church in Alachua County. The Old Mount Carmel Baptist Church in Gainesville, Florida, built in 1944 in the Pleasant Street Historic District, was a critical hub for the civil rights movement in North Central Florida during the 1960s and 1970s. It served as a command post for the local NAACP, hosting strategic meetings, nonviolent training, and planning for desegregation, led largely by Reverend Dr. Thomas A. Wright. The church was the epicenter of local, state, and national efforts to fight segregation in Alachua County, including support for students involved in the 1971 University of Florida Black Thursday sit-in. Criteria number five is location. To ensure each 11 to Save list represents the state as a whole, the committee makes efforts to select sites from different regions. So 10 out of the 67 Florida counties are represented here in the 2025 11 to Save list. All right. Now that you've submitted your nomination, what's next? Nominations will be will be notified in May 2026. If your nomination has been selected, please keep it a secret. The official announcement will be made at the Preserve Florida Conference in St. Pete during this opening ceremony on May 14th. The opening ceremony is free and open to the public. Every 11 to Save site is assigned an 11 to Save ambassador. The ambassador is a point person between the Florida Trust and the nominator. They'll work with you to learn more about the site, understand its unique history and challenges, and assist in identifying site-specific resources and solutions. Next, we're going to talk about the 11 to Save Grant Fund. So first question, what exactly is the 11 to Save Grant Fund? Launched in 2022, the 11 to Save Grant Fund is a way to tangibly assist 11 to Save sites beyond raising awareness and sharing resources. In its first 4 cycles, the grant fund has awarded a total of $37,726, assisted 10 historic sites, and facilitated projects from urgent roof repairs to creating museum exhibits to historic documentation. Next question is usually who's eligible. That nonprofit organizations, public agencies, state colleges, and school districts are all eligible. Unfortunately, individuals and for-profit organizations are not eligible for the 11 to Save Grant Fund. Your 11 to Save ambassador can help you locate other sources of funding or credits. Here's some important dates. The submission process for 2026 opens in October. Applications are due by November, and funds will be released by December. The 11 to Save Grant Fund is supported exclusively through donations of preservationists just like you. Become an 11 to Save supporter by going to the Florida Trust website and making a donation. There's various levels of monthly and annual donations, and you'll also receive this lovely pin. And you can also purchase a set of 11 to Save note cards, and all proceeds contribute directly to the 11 to Save Grant Fund. Are there any questions?
If you have a question, you can also type it into the chat. And thanks, Ines, for all the updates that you provided on 11 to Save nominations and the current status. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, while you think about your questions, let's move on to our next presenter, Dr. Linda Stevenson.
Well, hi everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm going to be speaking about the Florida Trust Preservation Awards Program. So if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and run through a quick presentation for you on the awards. Okay, that's there. Okay, okay, hopefully everyone is seeing the presentation. Yes?
Looks great.
Thank you. Great. Okay, so you might ask, why would I apply for a Florida Trust Preservation Award? The purpose of our awards program is to really recognize excellence in historic preservation across the state. We generally have 3 kinds of awards for eligibility. The first one is we really focus on the individuals that make our preservation work happen. That can be everyone from the project volunteers are super important, the construction process, some of the people that really contribute a lot of service to a project, that sort of thing. We also recognize people, educators in the field of historic preservation as well. Organizations are another group that we often like to honor, organizations that have some really great creative programs in terms of advocacy, interpretation, and project management. And then, of course, lastly, historic preservation projects, the actual bricks and mortar work. Perhaps there's some great media that also serves as advocacy, or some other design-related projects, preserving place, that sort of thing. So those are the three general categories of awards that we give out. For the current schedule, nominations were open in January, and most importantly, the deadline for the awards application is due next Friday, March 6th. So why would you apply? It's a great tool to raise awareness about your project. Many of our award recipients use it for their public relations and their marketing. It recognizes an excellence of achievement in the work and professional achievement as well. It builds goodwill with your volunteers, particularly if you have a lot of volunteers working with you. And you can find that can be an asset for future grant applications as well. So what's new and exciting this year? We, as the awards committee, like to tweak the awards periodically. And again, for the fourth year in a row, I think we've waived any nomination fees so that there is no cost to submit an application for a nomination. We've introduced one new category this year. It is the conservation, preservation, repair, and maintenance category. And I'll talk to you about that in a little more detail in a moment. So here's just a range of the kinds of award categories you might see. In the upper left, it was one of the buildings that was honored on a project that detailed some of the sites on the Chitlin Circuit a few years ago. To the upper right is an archaeology project, which we really like to honor our archaeological colleagues because they do a lot of important work above and below ground. Artisans, the actual skilled people that make our projects happen. We particularly love to honor them as well. And there's quite a few talented craftsmen throughout and craftspeople throughout Florida that are skilled in masonry, carpentry, and any of those specialty trades. And then really clever and effective adaptive reuses of existing spaces or careful restoration of existing sites as well. So our first category falls in, we'll talk about the, if you will, the place-based awards first. We created this award a few years ago to honor Sally Jude. She was one of the early champions of historic preservation in Florida. She had a remarkable life and was a founding member of Dade Heritage Trust and saved many important landmarks in the Miami-Dade area, including, she was instrumental in saving actually the Coconut Grove Cottage of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas property. She worked on the Miami River Inn. That was one of her projects as well. And Sally was equally known for nurturing the next generation of young preservationists, as well as being a key figure in the creation of the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. So this award is designed to acknowledge historic preservation work that strongly considers resilient design solutions. They're sustainable projects. Perhaps they are responding to a particular threat. For example, flood risk or sea level rise, that sort of thing is integrated into the thinking in the project. Or it may have an innovative use of green practices or materials while meeting the Secretary of the Interior standards. We also can look at eco-friendly community planning strategies and also educational projects that promote historic preservation and protect natural resources at the same time. The next category for which historically we've received most of the awards is our restoration, rehabilitation, or adaptive reuse. So this is last year's award winner, actually, was the train depot here in, the train depot project there. And sorry, had a little glitch here. The Delray Beach train station. Hang on one second for me. Let me reset this. There we go. And the criteria for a project like this is that we want to recognize best practices for restoring or rehabilitating or coming up with a really great adaptive use of a historic site. So the criteria are basically a building that needs to be acknowledged as historic, either at the local, state, or national level. The time frame is important for most of our submissions. We like them to be within the last 3 years. So for this cycle, it's going to be January 2023 to December 2025. And it should meet, of course, the Secretary of the Interior standards. And for adaptive use, we also like to look at the level of creativity in the project itself. So new this year, we've created a category called the Conservation, Preservation, and Adaptive Use category. And the idea is we're seeing a number of projects that come across our desks, basically, that are projects of limited scope, that are really beautifully executed projects that meet the definition of preservation within the Secretary of the Interior standards, and but yet are focused on very precise things or have somewhat of a limited scope. So in the case of, this is the Sedoni Mansion re-roof that we looked at last year, which was really beautifully crafted. It was rehabilitating an entire roof, but it was really focused on that piece of the project. And the work was particularly finely executed. So we wanted to honor that, create a type of award that specifically dealt with that type of work. So again, these buildings need to be registered as historic. They need to be completed within that last 3-year time frame. And in addition to something like a historic roofing repair, perhaps it's a project that was limited to conserving a particular kind of facade material or a window restoration, or even cyclical maintenance plan, which is a really important part of our work that is often not really acknowledged and honored as it should be. So the next kind of project we like to honor is, we really like to look at archaeology work, because this work is really important in terms of cultural resource management. So for these kind of projects, it could be something like a physical site investigation, or it could be an interpretation, or perhaps a creation of educational opportunities, and maybe improving access to a site, perhaps digitally. So for the criteria for this award is the project should be completed in accordance with professional archaeological and ethical standards as recognized either by the Society for Historical Archaeology or the Archaeological Institute of America. Another type of project that's place-based is often the historic landscape. So this award recognizes a restoration or a preservation or an interpretation of a site, or the creation of educational opportunities and access to these historic landscapes. These projects should comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, and also guidelines for the treatment of cultural landscapes. A new category last year was the category of preserving place. So the intent of this award is to recognize individuals, organizations, or projects that have excelled in placemaking and placekeeping. So for placemaking, we'll define that as the collaborative process for transforming public spaces into vibrant, inclusive, and functional places that reflect the unique identity and character of a community. And placekeeping is the active and intentional efforts to safeguard and maintain the cultural, historical, and social identity of a place. Some examples might include, perhaps there's an adaptive reuse project of a public space here, maybe a heritage trail or interpretive signage, projects within Main Street programs, oral history projects, and cultural heritage festivals are some good examples of projects that preserve place. Preservation Communications and Media is another project-based award, and this recognizes outstanding communications for heritage education. So it can be anything from a book, a printed material, brochures, curricula, to videos, to websites, to all sorts of interactive media. So a couple of examples are this project that was done in St. Augustine a few years ago regarding flood mitigation strategies, which was in the form of a story map. Another one was this really wonderful book produced by Austin Bell regarding archaeological artifact, the Key Marco cat, and telling the story of this artifact through a period of time. Particularly, it lived at the Smithsonian for a while, and then it came back to the site. So it was a really interesting story. So we'll move on to the next category of awards, which is organizational excellence. So with these awards, we like to acknowledge excellence in historic preservation. It can be a group, a corporation, a neighborhood, or other such organization. And some examples of the kinds of work that have won awards in this category include a successful fundraising project for a preservation initiative, creating certain activities that promote historic preservation within the community, creating and implementing new preservation legislation and policies at the local or state level, increasing the community's awareness of preservation through redevelopment or publications or events or literature. So we'll move on to the category of the People Awards. So as I mentioned before, Master Artisan is a category that we value very highly. Last year's winner was from Cody Clark from Preservation, and these are a couple of the buildings that he did. So this honors achievements in awards like woodworking or wrought ironwork or ornamental plaster, for example. It could be a historic repointing project or skill in that particular area, or hand carving of, say, plaster elements, decorative plaster elements in the space. Just some examples. The Individual Distinguished Service Award is designed to really honor sort of a lifetime achievement or a career that was dedicated to preserving Florida's history and heritage. Last year's winner was Frances Dolly McIntyre. She was, again, one of these founding preservationists in the 20th century here in Florida, and particularly dedicated to work in Miami-Dade County through her participation and early work in the Villagers, at Dade Heritage Trust, and the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. So the idea of this award is it's for someone that's made an impact in their community over a period of time and has been recognized as a leader in that community. And it can be someone who is an activist, an advocate, or other preservation leader. We have an award for educators as well. Roy E. Graham was the preservationist and architect who founded the University of Florida's standalone historic preservation program and was really instrumental in promoting historic preservation education in Florida, continuing that legacy at University of Florida. And so the goal of this award is to recognize a professional educator at all educational levels, from kindergarten all the way through postgraduate work, and demonstrates leadership in developing curricula and teaching historic preservation. So our winner last year was Dr. Catherine Conti Powers from Florida State University. The Historic Preservation Scholar Award is an award for students at all levels of academia, be it university level or postgraduate level, that's pursuing or has completed their education in the last 3-year period and is nominated by an instructor professor or someone that is aware of their work and has shown an outstanding commitment to historic preservation through their coursework, their research, their thesis project, or scholarly publications, and are also involved in other preservation groups and communities. So one of last year's winners, we had a number last year, it was Dr. Clarissa Carr from the University of Florida. And Dr. Carr received her PhD about 2 years ago and has since continued her work in that area. We especially are fond of our Volunteer of the Year awards because we can't do much without all the volunteers that make preservation possible. So for this award, we like to honor people that perhaps have contributed hands-on preservation or rehabilitation of historic resources, maybe contributed to education as a volunteer, or to research as a volunteer, or advocacy as well. So that's a quick overview of the awards that we offer. And I'll talk a little bit next about the process here. So the first step is to gather the information that you're going to need to prepare your award. And we have a guide for that, which we've got the links to at the end of this presentation. And also, if you click on the Florida Trust website, you can go to the tabs, the awards tab, and get the information you need there. So the first step is going to be, you're going to fill in the online nomination form. And then after you do that, the staff will reach back out to you, and you can start uploading documents to a dedicated Google Drive for all of the awards. You'll receive the link and you can upload your documents. And if you have any questions or need anything, please reach out to staff. Larry Crombie is going to be your point of contact for that work. And then once you've uploaded all the files and you've maybe done some back and forth with Larry or with our committee, and if you need any questions answered, you can upload everything, and then we'll contact you if we have any questions back. Our intent is, as a committee, we're going to meet at the end of March to review all of the award nominations and select the award winners. And you will be notified prior to the awards ceremony, which is going to be at the Florida Trust Conference this year in St. Pete on May 14th. So I have a few tips for you to prepare your presentation. Be very concise in your narratives, and be clear and to the point. Make sure you've gone down the checklist of what you need to submit and include all the supporting documents. Make sure your photos are pretty high resolution. And in some cases, mostly in terms of the awards that we give out to people, we do request a few letters of support and or owner consent, or owner, not consent necessarily, but owner notification if you're submitting for one of the place awards. And again, the deadline for the project is going to be next Friday. And here's a link, an active link in this presentation to the awards guide itself. So when you go into the guide, you'll find a recap of all of the different awards that we've gone over here, the criteria for selection of those awards, and then in Appendix A, you're going to find the supporting materials that you need for each type of nomination. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thanks, Linda, for your presentation. Thanks, Larry, for dropping the link into the chat. Does anybody have any questions about the process or about where to apply?
I do. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Do you prefer multiple documents uploaded for the awards for each of the categories that are requested, or can I put it all in one thing and upload it?
So Joanne, do you mean you're going to have to submit multiple projects, for example, or would it be one project and all the pieces of that one project?
Yeah, just one project.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we do have some really nice examples, and JJ Scott, who's a board member and an award winner for a lot of the beautiful architectural projects that he does in this realm, has a really nice format that he uses, and it's a combined PDF. So, and he's graciously agreed to allow us to share a sample if you like. We can take them either way, but it is really nice to have them all in one spot. I will say that. It makes the committee's job a little easier.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
I have another question then.
Okay.
Do we need a formal letter from both where the project is located and the agency that did the project for the owner consent?
No, actually, if it's a place-based project award, we've changed that requirement this year. And actually, all we want to know is that the owner's been notified that you intend to submit an award. And so that can be in the form, I think we covered, let's see, we covered this in the supporting materials. So I'll just quickly read what we said there. Owner notification: if the award includes a building not owned by the nominator, please include a copy of the notification sent to the owner. It can be a letter or an email is even fine too.
Okay. Same as if it's a state agency?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Great questions, Joan. I have a question, Linda. Are there any categories that you typically receive a low number of nominations for and you'd like to see increased by next Friday?
Well, I tell you, it's really interesting year to year how that changes. We love getting the Artisan Awards and also the volunteer awards. You know, those are always great. We love getting the scholar awards too. That's really, last year we had a nice group of scholars, but we always appreciate getting those. We typically receive most of our awards are in the category of restoration and rehabilitation or adaptive use. if someone, and sometimes what the committee will do is if an award comes in or a nomination comes in and it seems like it might fit another category a little bit better. So say perhaps it's a preservation project that has a really strong component of resiliency or sustainability. That one might be considered perhaps for the Resilient Preservation Award. So we might also move nominations around to a category that fits a little better too. So it's hard to tell, year to year it changes. But yeah, we're really happy for anyone to submit an award that they think or a project that's worthy or a person that's worthy of an award.
Great. I'll ask one more question. It doesn't sound like we've got additional unless somebody wants to
Okay.
type it into the chat. And maybe we can wrap up with this. Could you paint us a picture of the awards ceremony and what it would, feel like for the recipient to receive the award and what it would look like? And maybe how that's varied or how that will vary this year from previous years if other people have attended previously.
Yeah, actually, it's going to probably be a little bit different this year because we were just trying to make it a little more engaging and fun for people. So we've got a really, my understanding is the conference committee has selected a really beautiful venue in St. Petersburg for this project. And it's in the, is it the Unitarian Church, I believe? So it's one of the churches in the area there that has a really nice facility. And so it's just, generally we like to have people come up to receive their awards, and we take a photograph of if it's a team, the entire team, or the person that receives the award, and just to try to make it a kind of a festive and nice affair for everyone.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your presentation, and we've enjoyed both of them today. And thank you everybody for joining us today. If you or your company is interested in sponsoring a future Lunch and Learn, please email Laura Glenn, Florida Trust. Her contact information will be added to the chat now. If you're not already a member of the Florida Trust, consider joining for free access to webinars and many other great benefits, like our newly relaunched Preservation Passport program. And we'll also put the link in the chat for that. We hope you join us next month in March for our Lunch and Learn, Echoes of the Past, Interpreting History Through Cultural Resources. This informative Lunch and Learn will discuss how archaeological sites and historical resources help tell the stories of the people who came before us, and is scheduled for Thursday, March 26th at 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. If you haven't registered yet, the Zoom registration link will be put in the chat now. Thanks, Larry. Just an FYI, all registrants for today's Lunch and Learn will receive a follow-up email in the coming days with a link to today's video, the presentation material, and any other additional handouts and resources. Thank you again for joining us today. Have a great Friday.
Thank you.